that central platform filled with adobe blocks, and you could still see the imprints of the grass mixed in with the adobe in the block. So it wasn't just loose soil that went into that cellar, it was big chunks of adobe had gone in there. And the best way that I could, it's speculative, but my best way to explain that would be that after that 1824 burial, that original magazine might have turned into a burial platform, and that they filled in the cellar and put burials in the bottom of the cellar. But we'd only opened up a 1 meter square excavation unit, which just got to one small portion of that cellar floor. If someone wanted to reconstruct that, there are all sorts of cultural issues that we'd have to approach about what to do. There is the possibility, since the cellar wall is lined with cobbles that are set in mud, we could do an excavation just on the very surface without trying to hit burials, and we could see how far around those rocks that are stacked on each other go, and maybe get some idea of how large that cellar is. And which, at some point, I think that cellar is a neat enough feature at the center of the fort that it might be nice to at least figure out how big it is. There might be some remote sensing technique that could work there. But certainly a shallow excavation that wouldn't disturb burials would be able to resolve it as well. For something like the guard room, where we had some teams that excavated enough to find a lot of the construction fabric, the lime plaster, which was stuck into stick thatch, we found out how much is there, and we know from George Jackson's map how big he thought that structure was. But if we were going to build right on top of it, we would be, in some interpretive plan, if we were going to reconstruct buildings inside, there's a lot of archaeology there. We only touched a little bit of it, and it would be really sort of damaging to a national historic landmark to just go ahead with an archaeological reconstruction on top of unaltered material. So I think that there would have to be, to use the state language, that if there was going to be that kind of reconstruction inside the fort of structures, we'd have to do a data recovery, where there would be something approved by State Historic Preservation Division that would actually try to recover more of the floor materials than the little bits of testing that we did in different portions of it. And again, all of that should be in consultation with the community rather than just decided, by State Historic Preservation Division. So my short answer is, doing reconstruction inside the fort, absolutely yes. There would need to be more, and in some cases it would depend on what we wanted to do. Outside the fort, I think between the Hammond tests in the 1970s, the backhoe trenches, and the shovel test pitting that we did that was negative, and almost in most places, with a few places, and again, the Bishop Museum's work that Pat McCoy did, there's one place along the coast that we expect from Vancouver's accounts and from the drawing that was done by William Ellis in 1778, was probably the Kauhale of Kaumakahele and Kaeokulani. And they actually, Pat McCoy didn't have that in his report in the 70s, but they did find not only the house platform buried with the sugarcane soil there, but they found burials. And so that is also along the coast. And again, if anything was happening there, I think most people on burial councils or other things would just say, you leave that alone, right? And so if that area is left alone, I think most of the area outside the fort, away from that, would probably be something that, I'm not on the State Historic Preservation Division, but if I was a consultant, which I'm not, making a recommendation to State Historic Preservation Division, I think most of the other areas outside the fort could be managed with what is called archaeological monitoring, which means that as construction is underway, that there are both probably cultural and archaeological monitors there, just in case something does turn up, that they can say, wait, stop, we just found something we didn't expect. But most of that area has been augured, backhoed, plowed by sugarcane plows, and we've done archaeological testing enough to say that it is not going to be an area where there are close to the surface things that would be destroyed by putting in walking paths, irrigation systems, or anything else that might come along. There is actually already an irrigation system out there in PVC, but it's been damaged over the years. Anyway, I think that there could be light reconstruction outside the fort without much difficulty. And then as far as the fort walls themselves, we have the issue of the tunnel, that if the walls were perfectly reconstructed, we would be opening up a tunnel that is a hazard to local kids and to just in terms of safety, in terms of having a crawl space under there. and we would probably have to find some way to lock and fence and gate that off of something if it was opened up again. It's, again, this tunnel is not a lava tube. It is not something that you can swim underwater in the Waimea River and pop up inside the fort in, which is what the local story is. But the tunnel that we found is actually constructed into the fort wall, and it's a big enough crawl space that you can crawl through underneath the fort wall and pop up inside the fort. And it's open enough that I can imagine that kids in the 1950s and 40s probably could have done that. But it's a crawl space, and it's filled up with dirt largely at this point, which would have to be excavated and cleaned out. But that would be exposed if the walls were fixed, so to speak. And I think in general, I think archaeological monitoring around the walls should be there anytime that those stones are being moved. And that's just from my knowledge base. Other people might have other things that they know about where there might be iwi kupuna or other stories that I think we should consult with before anybody just proceeded with starting to move rocks. That's all.
Also, I think one of the things that's important to, in the research, especially in Russia, is to find out how those walls were finished. Because if it was actually built as a star-shaped fort, it would have had a layer of dirt on it. Because that's actually what stops the impact of a cannonball, not the rock.
One of the things about these walls are that, unlike any kind of Hawaiian construction that I've ever seen, is that the walls did have earth mixed in with the stone as they were being built. And so that partially would have absorbed that impact. There are plenty of these Tracy Italian forts that, exactly as you described, have earth around the outside so that if a mortar hits it, that again it's absorbing that impact. I'm pretty confident that it never got to that point.
Well, that's why I'd like to know for sure if that's in the writings that we don't know about.
Exactly. The one writing that we do have, Osipov, is saying that the walls on the seaward side were finished and the Malka ones weren't, and that was what was there. But it would be great to see if there's more about earth being brought in.
Sure.
Can you go ahead and ask Alexander what research he's going to be doing? You've got the phone right next to you.
Oh, so Alexander?
Oops.
Hello? He's still got a red hang-up button, so he's still there.
He's not listening.
He fell asleep.
Alex. Hello.
I think I hear him. He's speaking. It's just a low volume.
Can you hear us? Here we go.
Well, actually, I can hear you, yes, but I can't. Well, it's. I need to switch between good, good sound and speaking, and between my microphone and my head. Phones and. Okay, what is the question? One more time.
The question was, what do you plan to do in St. Petersburg?
Well, actually, I have some appointment in two archives in St. Petersburg. Is the archive for foreign affairs and historical archive, and I try to search more information in Russian sections on Russian language about this fortress, because in one of the historical archive in St. Petersburg, they have all documents about from Russian American company, and I think probably they can have something we can find. And so in a Barclay library, we have a Russian version of Schaeffer's diary.
Yes.
So we do have this diary already, and the specialists from the Russian State University, well, how it's told on Russian, well, they made all them, a diary was written by hand, and sometimes it's not understandable, and they do all this huge work to transfer it to modern language.
Yes.
And we do have these documents already, and I can share you if you want, but it's on Russian language. and I will
Old
learn it
Russian.
very carefully right now and in the next few weeks, and we'll tell you what the diarists tell us about this fortress.
So, Alex, so did you say that the version of Schaeffer's diary that you have is coming from the library at
All
Berkeley?
Russian.
In
Yes,
Russian?
they have microfilm about, and I have a copy of this digital of Russian version of Schaeffer's diary.
Yes,
Because I
that's in
never-
Berkeley.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I never met this diary in Russian archives.
Right, I think that diary is one that was actually transcribed by Alphonse Pinart. And I think that,
Yes,
yes. And that's,
But I have it on Russian language, is
Good.
language, and yeah. Mhm.
good, хорошо.
Too good.
Okay, any other thoughts on the historical? Visitor surveys and counts. Alexander, have you seen anything on your counter that you installed?
Sorry, say it again.
Have you seen any results from your counter that you installed over at the fort? The visitor
number.
numbers?
Yeah.
My counter was stolen,
Oh,
and we had a result from the first 3 or 4 weeks probably.
how many? Oops, just heard a beep.
Counting in low season, and it's not real numbers. I think we need to install another one and try to calculate one more time in probably in the beginning of May or June. So we will have a much closer to reality numbers. Elena have one more counter, so she can install it, and I will ask her about to do it in June, for example.
Okay, thank you. I think the other thing Victoria and I have talked about, from the parks perspective, is to develop a visitor survey. And maybe we can get some of you all to help us actually go out and do some of the surveys and visitor counts. I think you just drafted, Anna, you didn't?
No, I
draft
did
it.
here
You
too.
did do one for Russian Fork? Okay, well, maybe, do I have that? I'm trying to remember.
No, but I
thought
could
you
resend
said
it to
Anna,
you.
but, maybe we can get that out to everyone and just have you take a look and give us feedback. Could be a good way just to get some other perspectives. Okay, so we'll follow up on that. One of the main elements of an interpretive plan is to identify your interpretive themes, which are the messages, what you want people to come away with. And it can range from orientation to the site, like where is the restroom? Maybe not so much at this site, but that's one that comes up a lot for the parks. To more of the historical story that we want people to understand, and I think we touched on that quite a bit with the other discussions. And then from your themes, you try to determine what's the best way to tell that message, to
Mhm.
get it across to people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you start thinking about your interpretive devices. And again, we've kind of touched on that with signboards, with audio tours, with apps, and considering the site and any of the logistical things that might enter in. I know when we drew up the 1988 plan, there was an issue if you're at the entry to the fort and you're looking Mackay, there's not a good level path to be able to go around. So I think we actually talked about some kind of cantilever trail. I mean, it got very elaborate in terms of how you might actually be able to construct a trail that would go all the way around.
Hey, folks.
Um,
Hello.
yeah.
Sorry I'm late.
There's a little bit going on in the parks these days. So, I guess for my benefit, could someone repeat everything that's been said since 9:30 this morning?
Yeah, it's all up there. 4 hours worth of talk up there on one page. Yeah. And then, that's where we would go into more of the interpretive center and, you know, what are the elements that we would want to see in this building? The architectural design elements perhaps. I know we saw some ideas shared by Alexander in the last meeting. You know, it could range from something that's maybe more modern and functional versus something that maybe has more of the historical elements, where it looks a little more like what you might have seen inside the fort. Because I don't know, realistically, reconstructing the buildings inside the fort, I think, is going to be very challenging. So, I mean, if we can do a visitor center that has perhaps the look at least of what the buildings would have been, maybe that's one way we can address that. So those are the kinds of things that I think we would consider under the interpretive center. And then I think, as I mentioned earlier, operations and programs. And I think that's where the community also is going to be a major player in terms of the partnerships, the nonprofits, you know, how we would actually operate a program there at the site, how we would develop educational programs for the schools. And, you know, the reality is state parks right now, whether we could ever get the positions that would be needed to really do the types of programs that I think all of us would like to see, you know, it's kind of probably not too likely. So that's where we're going to depend on nonprofits and others, you know, who have an interest in and expertise to step up and help us out. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of, I just wanted to give a quick overview of what I envision kind of a long-term planning effort to consist of, and where we'd like to have all of you participate along the way. But, any thoughts before we move on? Alan, did you want to say anything? I'm not sure, has everyone met Alan? I think most of the people, Chris, you met Chris Pike,
Yep.
Okay. And Jay.
Sorry.
Jay's sleeping.
Yeah, we didn't sleep last night, so
Oh, okay,
it's
okay.
just like
I didn't sleep much either.
I lost my camera. We just like trying to get here, just like and do it. Okay, it doesn't matter what
Yep.
cost.
I'm just glad you're here, but
Yeah.
no, I don't have anything specific. I want to just kind of listen in, and if you guys need any feedback from me, I'm here to give it. You know, that's when we can sort of set policy and make decisions on behalf of parks. But this is really, you know, it's Martha Spugliano, and I do appreciate her taking the lead on all of this. But you know, like I said last time, I like the sort of groundswell of support that has reemerged since the summit, and I hope there's enough momentum to carry something through this time, as opposed to letting another plan sit on a shelf, which we do far too much of that. Yeah, I like where it's headed, but there's a lot of work ahead of us.
I think we're gonna get somewhere this time, even a little bit, we'll see how far we get, but it's all steps, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think the way we were kind of headed this morning was into restoration, so,
Service. You disconnected. You got disconnected. I apologize. All right. Yes,
I guess again, we kind of move into what is your vision in terms of what you would like to see, the level of restoration that would occur at the site. So maybe I can just open it up to anyone who kind of would like to share your thoughts.
I'll just say briefly that I think I already said it this morning, but in my mind, it's about improving interpretation, doing stabilization where appropriate, getting to restoration. And I don't think, with the burials issues inside and with other sorts of cultural issues and with the amount of archaeology that remains inside the fort, that anybody should picture restoration inside as being an easy thing where you just go ahead and just start building. And so just as we plan budgets and as we plan time and investment, that all of those things should be put out there as a realistic thing to deal with.
Okay.
Well, I think also there's value in watching all of that happen, and it can happen over decades.
Right, yeah, and believe me, there's nothing I would like more I love Fort Ross, I love Sitka, you know, like as far as two different examples here from the Russian-American company side. And if we could get to the point where this was contributing to that sort of collection of sites that already exist that are tied to the Russian-American company and pointing out why this one is so different, you know, I think that would be a wonderful addition to Pacific history and as well as to a local community. If we could have something here that says like, here's this fort, but this is not what the Russian-American company Fort Ross looks like in 1 year, and the reason why is because of your ancestors, right? You know, and then the point is driven home that it's a different place and that it has a Hawaiian connection. I think we can do that a lot with interpretation, but if we can get to the point where it becomes I don't want to see the walls continue to fall apart and to the point where it's just nothing but rubble. And have been so many good examples of restoration of incredibly significant and sacred sites like Hapaiali'i and Ke'iku and Pu'ukohola. You know, it was actually the Rockefellers who invested in the restoration of Pu'ukohola. The story is in Hanahoe magazine. You know, as I flew in here. You know, but yeah, it can be done.
Great calling Rockefellers.
Yeah. Lest we forget Iolani Hale.
Oh,
the
yeah,
biggest one.
Kilani Hale
There you
is
go.
beautiful.
I mean, in terms of this site, I suggest we restore it to the year 1650.
That was the administrator speaking again.
But no, I mean, I would see even just like if one of the star points was fully restored to what it looked like at the time of completion, right? That would tell an amazing story just right there, right? And then other aspects could be done. We have so much power to do things digitally now, far more than even, you know, when put the interpretive science in 20 years ago. That can almost tell a better picture, especially when you can never be 100% certain. So in particular with the interior buildings, which we're still trying to figure out, and those changes over time, you can present them as a series of options, and as you learn more, you can change that story. But you invest that on the ground, which takes a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of compliance, a lot of cultural concerns.
And you still could be wrong.
You still could be wrong, right? And you don't want to be left up. You know, I always say we strive for authenticity, right, in this business. And, you know, having worked for a couple of decades on restoration at Nu'ualukai, you know, it's not an exact science, right? Because when things are no longer there or they have changed so dramatically over time, each of those little pieces tells a greater story, and it's really hard to pick which one, you know, to decide that's the style we're going to do, that's the time, because I think if it's more of a continuum, then build something and then, you know, they don't change it for 150 years. It's constantly evolving, and particularly when you have dry stacked architecture, I think it's even easier to constantly, you know, change the way a site looks. So start small, start with virtual and digital, the interpretation, and you know, see where it goes.
Another thought I had about it's not specifically like the kind of restoration I think we're referring to here, but more along the lines of Kuleana for ongoing restoration. And when I look around the room here, like I feel that a younger Opio voice might be missing because they
They're all
will
at
be
work.
the ones that will carry out. And I'm thinking more like high school age, you know, and if somehow maybe we should try to involve somebody from Waimea High School and see if they can identify like their student council, or you know, which could maybe turn into a senior project, or you know, where they,
Like they
we
cook, they
have,
work the family.
we have that younger voice here to see this process, because they're, you know, they're here, and I think that might be for longevity, to carry it beyond many of us. I mean, I don't feel like I'm that old, but, you know, somebody in 16, 17, 18, I think would bring fresh manao, and then, like I said, be able to carry this for future generations. And I know, like, Lico Pereira, he does the guidance class there, and he works with a lot of the student council, so he might be a resource to see who we could identify, or, you know, even talk to the principal and something like that. But when I think of restoration, I'm thinking of that longevity, to even maybe do some, to be able to be a part of that physical work, and then carrying this mo'olelo and the work on for us. So
Is Pili Kamara still teaching there?
I'm not sure.
Really, I see her.
I don't know.
She's
Would
one of our
that be
former
like a
students.
liability, or like this like a whole other thing, yeah, with the kids involved, or is it a smooth transition to ask them? Because that is a good idea.
Well, this is the problem. So every school, every educational actually entity, to get the students, to get the license to educate somebody, they have to develop the program or buy the program for the specific age, for the specific kind of like students, right?
You're talking about curricula?
Yeah. So pretty much the young generation, like you said, each grade has a different program, right? So I think it's more sufficient maybe to talk to principals that familiar with all programs, not only one,
Okay.
right? So the same way with the college, the same way with their UH, okay? It's better to talk to a professor that knows the whole program and every program potentially in their UH, and they will think about how to implement our site into the program, I would say this way.
I understand, but I mean, what I asked
The liability.
is it a liability issue? The program can
It
be
is a
whatever.
liability,
Well,
and the
it-
DLNR is
down the line-
concerned about it.
So, I mean,
So
kinda like
down
when
the
you
line, there
send
could
your-
be some, but I think there's ways around it. I mean, I just saw
They just said
Nico
come
and the
in,
students go to the hospital yesterday, you know? I mean, so they do that on a regular basis.
My daughter's 14, and she's in school in a public charter school. And what the public charter schools have been doing, and Kamehameha Schools has been helping with this too, is they've been pushing the DOE to try to build more programs based on what they call project-based learning.
Place-based
Right? So,
learning.
and which is sort of morphed into this place-based learning concept, and I don't know enough about where the Waimea School is in that process, but I'm pretty certain that there's gonna be room there, that what happens is that the teacher and if we can get them here to these meetings, can figure out if they're teaching Hawaiian history in a certain year, then that's the 6th grade class that comes and helps out with this process. And if they're teaching something to do with engineering and need to figure out physics and load bearing and something else, well, then that can be part of a restoration process if they're learning physics.
Relevant to their
So
kind of-
what we have to do is find ways to make the effort something which engages the curriculum plan for the different groups.
Yeah.
But project-based learning is much farther along now than it was 15 years ago.
It's definitely possible.
And right now, you can already participate in the work days if you want to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Second
And the-
Saturday.
Because that's, the
everyone-
insurance is covered under West Florida Business.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I get carpal
Sign
tunnels
your
and it's
state, but
signing
it
off
has to
for
be-
for my daughter
Well, it has
to
to be
go to
along the
different
lines
schools.
of your curriculum
Yeah.
too, that fits
So
in,
the
right?
liability is covered. Parents just sit there and sign off day after day.
Yeah, because you know when you send your kids to excursion, they ask you what insurance, you know, so I just
No, it's just-
think
we
that's
have
a
forms.
beautiful
We have
idea.
release of liability waivers, so the parents will sign.
Mm.
But anyway, yes. And then like the next issue I think is still I feel like we at the same time like we have to continue developing their because I look at DLNR's 80 what was the work was done the last time 88. Somebody put it together the plan of future actually build up of visitor center or something. Somebody did this, right? So already, like they did, I don't know, contents or something, like they got this information, they put this project together. So are we standing right now in the same shoes right now, or we should start it from the beginning? Just
I
to
think we
develop the
should-
visitor center, like you said, like, okay.
We should revisit what was done, but it was just a footprint. It didn't go into what was in the building, what the exhibits would consist of. I think the location perhaps makes sense, but I would even want to revisit that. Is that going to be the best location?
Yeah.
Because here we are, what, 40 years later?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or 30 years.
Well, but I hear your voice that yes, probably restoration process is just like it's a very lengthy process, and like everybody agree that it's gonna take a year, so maybe 10th of years, I would say, right? And it's gonna cost a lot of money. But to be sufficient, I would say, like to be profitable, this site could be, without rebuilding the whole site immediately, it could be profitable if we will process it with their tours, audio tours, and then like a building visitor center. As soon as we're gonna get the visitor center in the place, we're definitely gonna see their some funds and some potential and different approach. So I think we should definitely start focusing ourselves on their visitor center and this like keep up tours that will be easy to do, right? And put together their real plan for these blueprints, whatever contest, I don't know, like or design content, whatever. We just need to create this strategy, what we're doing, and stay focused on something, maybe like one first step. We're going this route, boom. When we finish it, we will switch maybe to restoration, like or something deeper that will take a long time. Because right now, there is a community need of this visitor center. We understood this. Right now, kids would love to visit this place, but there is nowhere to go. And you're not allowed to let them jump all over the place in the site, right? It's dangerous.
Right. As when people go there, what breaks my heart is someone goes there and is turned off by the place because it's too hot or it's too thorny or
Yeah.
or that it's too dirty, and they walk away with a sense that it's only you live on the island, you go there twice in your life. That's not what the place has the potential to be more. And I really feel that if we find a way to build an interpretive center that can be used as a base for not only tourists but for local schools and kids, then that is something that is a win-win for everybody involved. And just like Alan and I were talking last meeting, is I don't think the state of Kauai, the county of Kauai really wants that many more people flying here on planes. But it would be really not, the roads are packed, the infrastructure can't handle what's going on, the state parks up in Waimea Canyon are getting overrun, it's just the people all jam into certain places that they know that they'd like to go. And if we could take that same group of people and spread them out a little bit more and be down in Waimea and actually enjoying the experience and spending some of their time there and not flying more people into the island, it's spreading people out a little bit more. And it's going to be easier to manage. It's going to be easier for different businesses to get involved in being supported by this huge number of people around the island. And yeah, the ability to stand in that park and point across the river and go, this is where Captain Cook first came ashore, January 20th, 1778, and go through the whole history of all of the different ali'i and ties to Waimea and with the kalo fields and Kamakahele and Kaeokulani, and you could just go from that place in a way that would ground people in all of this
See
different stuff.
everything, all the history.
Yeah,
from that
looking out
side.
at Niihau, I mean, from that spot and telling people what that is, if you're comfortable and you can stand there and point to all of this and explain this incredible history from that place, that's something that people could return to. It wouldn't just have to be the Roberts Hawaii bus people, it could be everybody. Is there Roberts Hawaii on this island?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Thanks, sir.
We have buses in we saw yesterday.
So I think we all have reasons to invest in the idea of improving an interpretive plan there. That's going to be good for state parks. It's going to be good for Hawaiian culture. It's going to be good for better representation to international communities of people who want to see this place maintained. So it's a win-win. And all we need to do is find out a way to plan it well and to come up with funding.
Mm-hmm.
Simple.
Simple.
Alan, that would be you find out the money.
Well, and then you think about like
Some success.
this week, right? This week with people not being able to access Ha'ena and Halilea
It would be a
beyond
perfect-
White Park.
perfect time to
It's
have
the
it.
perfect time
Yeah.
for that.
It would-
Those visitors who
It would be-
cannot go
It'd be
They're all
come
packed.
over here.
Yeah, right now it'd be packed.
Yeah.
Because people are looking for things
Who's
to do.
Everybody that can't go to high
That's
school?
gonna keep happening. You know, that's kind of
Yeah.
normal, I think, so.
Yeah.
Can't go to Puli Hollow.
No, anything over.
Yep.
Boy, Black
Here's
Talk
the
might be
only
well
thing.
attended tonight.
And the-
Yeah, there we go. We're gonna find out. Peter talk, test
Where else
case.
is it? Oh, cool.
Well, the other thing that this discussion just reminded me, when we were doing the plan back in 1988, it was part of the Main Street program. And not Russian Port, Ha'ula'ula was seen as the entry point to visiting Waimea.
Exactly.
So, I guess that's another interpretive theme potentially, how much we want to use the site as an opportunity to inform people, what else can you do in Waimea, what else is there to see, how does this tie into the history of Waimea?
Well, and yeah, I mean, I like that idea, and what I was thinking too is that right now with the Kauai General Plan, updating the West Side Regional Plan, I think this is a great opportunity to make sure that some of this can be reflected in the general plan for the West Side. And I know that they're organizing focus groups right now.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, and so it
Where
starts from
else?
Hanapepe. So for West Side, they're looking at from actually Wahiava all the way this way to Napali and all of that. So I have heard from the Planning Commission that they're putting these focus groups together. And then in discussions for the Hanapepe Community Association, you know, we've also been, one of the things that did get into the Kauai General Plan was space for a cultural center in Hanapepe. And so some of my thoughts have also been that, you know, because that's kind of an entryway to the west side too, is that we kind of just keep sending people this way, right? So from Hanapepe, we send them Paulaula, you come learn over here, you keep going Kekaha, you know, you can continue on this way, but we all support each other. But I think if we can roll that into the general plan discussions, that would be beneficial to all of us on the west side. I mean, even DHHL is working on updating their West Kauai regional plan. So for Hawaiian homelands, having this opportunity to, you know, remember and honor these kinds of wahipana, I think will be critical in these for the next 20 years, because that's what these regional plans look at is next 20 years. So,
Yeah, and it's so important that these links be, you know, they're focused on the place you're at. So not one visitor center for the whole island, it's a visitor center for each area.
yeah.
We're actually, Alan and I are actually on a committee for this, with Trails and Parks, it's a subcommittee for the general update plan.
Mm.
So we've been working on this for over a year now. And so the fort has come up in different places around, but it's still an ongoing process.
Okay.
So we're working with Sukanoho and Nalani Bruin and people like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I know they're sending out the invitation letters now. That's
Mhm.
coming from
Right.
the mayor to
Right.
set up those focus
Yeah,
groups in all the
I'm one
different.
of them.
I'm one of them too. So.
We'll work
So I
with
mean,
each other.
good because we have different people in the different communities that can make sure that it's there.
So would state parks be invited?
They,
in any
they
of
said
these
that you guys
situations,
are
or-
separate, they're discussing separate, you're not part of the community, which didn't
What?
make any sense.
How does that
That's
happen?
Who said that?
Who said that? Give it the name.
The state parks and the communities, because it's so integral to the West Kauai area.
Yep.
And they said, well, no, we're gonna talk to them, and they're gonna talk to them.
Yeah.
Like their own group.
Right, like they would.
Insiders and outsiders.
Interesting. Unless they were referring to us being on the more island-wide parks and trails.
Maybe, I don't know,
subcommittee.
I don't know what they're.
Sounds, yeah,
They've got funny agendas,
okay.
but, I have definitely advocated, I mean, just because of
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
State Park, that it needs to be part of the discussions.
Is there
It
a
helps, because then
consultant?
you don't have to go, we don't have to work backwards.
Yeah.
I mean,
Somebody
it's
else
the
is planning
biggest-
things
The
in
State
spite
Parks
of
is the biggest landowner in
landowners.
West Kauai.
I don't know, looking.
Is there a consultant that the county is hiring?
They're doing it internally.
Yeah, we are.
So the
Oh, that's a-
planning department's gonna try and do it, and right now I heard the focus groups are not gonna be public, open to the public, which I think some people are not supportive of, you know.
There's
We want it
reasons
to
why,
be
yeah.
more
Inclusive,
open so that
inclusive.
people can have
Well,
a
I think
place.
it's, again, a focus group, and then they go to the public in separate
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
It's like everything's separate, little groups, and it's kind of
Siloed.
interesting.
They don't have the focus group turning in.
Well,
Representation.
And that's what happened
That's what
on
happens.
the west, or the other side.
It does.
Yeah.
It happens to that, so that's why they do the focus groups, right?
They had some
With
really
people who
ugly
have
meetings.
a little bit cooler demeanor, and can talk about the issues without getting
Yep.
emotional and, you know, talk
Exactly.
about sovereignty and other issues like that, which is what happens in those things.
Well, what they're trying to do, I think, is make sure that they're finding representatives from,
Different places.
different places, so nobody's left out. But, you know, whether that, I don't know who all the group is, so I can't say if anybody's left out.
We are.
so let's summarize so what we got right now. So we definitely agree that we need to initiate the process on their refresh this plan, right? Like so how usually like DLNR like how it starts the process. I would just like, can we help somehow? Can we, what we should do? Like, because I'm gonna go back to my Russian community and I will say, hey guys, this is what happened. We need your help. And they will say, what we can do.
Well, again, I would go back to the interpretive plan.
Okay.
I think that the interim improvements that we talked about can be simultaneously going on at the same time as the interpretive planning. At this point, I would say the historical overview.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Alexander, I think, is, making that effort. Interpretive themes. How do you want the Russian story to be told?
Mhm.
Maybe that's something, from the Russian American community.
Mm-hmm.
Give that some thought. And, I mean, it doesn't necessarily just need to be the text of what that story is, but,
Mhm.
are there, some exhibits?
Mhm.
Just ideas that you might have in terms of how you want to tell that story. And again, we can bring it to the group and have discussion and see, how to blend it in with,
Sure.
with the picture. I don't necessarily want to get into the details of the interpretive center just yet. I'd rather get a little more of the foundation first. I'm definitely not ready to talk about funding until we've got a little better handle on what we're really
Yeah.
looking at, and maybe a timeline. Maybe at the next meeting, I did put timeline actually more in our organization, but, I had something, I know you mentioned November, but that was tied in more to our state budget. Is there something going on in your group that you do have some time?
Well, we no, the Alex is working on the Russian organization. Yes, I'm working here for the Russian community on Oahu and to try to kind of like hooked up all islands together Russians because we have only like up to 3,000 people on the islands, legit. But I try to kind of also communicate with other like diplomatic entities and other stuff because they're interested in what's going on and et cetera, et cetera. So so far, people just I have like list of the people asking like how can I help? What I want to volunteer. What should I do? It's like, oh, wait, just wait. We're working on this, and that is why. Don't get me wrong. I'm not pushy guy, but I just try to understand like where we're going, what I should say to the people. Okay.
I'll see you guys tonight. So I just gotta go around. I have a catering drop off to do, and then 4:30 we can meet at the theater. They'll open up the place, and then we can go in and.
Oh, nice.
Starts at 6, right?
Yeah.
Starts at 6.
It starts at 6, but we
Yeah.
can go in at 4:30.
Okay, good.
So I'll
Good.
see everybody there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys.
See you later. Love you too, Angie.
Yeah.
I was gonna say for timeline, I don't know if this will help us maybe set some goals, or something to work towards if it's something that we all would like to, but like Sarah mentioned earlier, that the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs is meeting in November this year on Kauai at the Kauai Marriott, and each of the clubs here on Kauai are planning different huaka'i to their own within their own moku, and so since Kaumuali'i Hawaiian Civic Club is located in the Kona moku, we're looking at a huaka'i that would include pa'ulaula. So our delegates they sign up for huaka'i. We usually do it a whole day thing. It's we'll get a bus and all that kind of stuff, but it'll be an opportunity to get some of our messaging there. I mean, we can use them as a target group, or get feedback from them. What did you like about the messaging, or how can we any way that we want to get some input. We also may have an opportunity if we want to have we also do workshops. So we have different times throughout the week that we bring in guest speakers. So we could even use that as a platform. So Sarah and I work really closely with the board. We sit on the board to plan all of this, and right now that's part of our thought process. So we could have this opportunity to reach out to our membership is throughout the islands as well as on the continental US, and we usually have anywhere from 300 to 400 delegates that show up. So definitely an opportunity for us.
Where's it gonna be, at one of the hotels?
Kauai Marriott.
Marion?
Yeah, that's
Convention.
our whole week, November 11th to the 18th, and I think the huaka'i will either be on the Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. We're trying to get that finalized.
Yeah, I've heard people starting to talk about it. So,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, good.
I just didn't know the dates and exactly
Yeah,
where.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good platform, arena to try some
Yeah.
messaging.
For
Yeah,
sure.
because it's all the Kanakas that are buying, boom,
Well, you got people from mainland.
all
from-
over,
All
all over.
So,
Yeah.
Alex, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Marta said that you're gonna help to work on the timeline. So
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Okay, and then so you're gonna develop some materials from St. Petersburg, and just to put it together, so where everybody will continue working on the timeline and putting together everything. So, and then what else we need to do now?
We need to work on website and content.
Your website.
Yes, and the website with content, and then the different address, web address, Paulaula, and then I think the next step. Actually, back in 2009, we also created a plan what to do, how to build a visitor center, and what about if we're gonna scan their previous plan of DLNR, and then I can scan my plan from. I'm not sure that I allowed actually. Oh yikes! Yeah, this architecture. Yeah. We created the plan also and a business plan also for the fort before back in 2009, and the problem is it didn't went through. So I think we are standing at the point, right now in the right direction. Right now, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and let's do at least like something small step forward, and then. I'm sorry, Marta, I interrupted you.
Well, I was just gonna say, I know, Elena's not here today.
Yeah, Anderton.
She has a tour company, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, it would be interesting to hear from her, you know, kind of how she approaches her visitation of the site, you know, what she shares, because I presume she's focusing more on the Russian history, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, maybe we can encourage her to come to the next meeting and maybe share a little more about, kind of
Yeah.
how she leads her visits.
When we went last time over there to set up their meter counter, right? So she showed us like her briefly like her how she approaches like her this site. So technically, this board actually gives the most information, and she shared with us that not too many people go to see the site actually technically, but. Alex, right? Am I right? Do you remember when?
Well, yes. Actually, I don't remember right now how well exactly numbers of the visitors, but it's not too much right now. But I think it's just because it's a low season for tourists. And
yes, but do you remember that what Elena said about this? How she pursue with their tourists to show this site? Like she was like trying to, she expressed that she was only able to show it briefly, not kind of detail like Alita does it, you know, like around the, like about every single piece. So, and it's definitely the question of this presentation, whatever we have to set it up, like with the timeline, with their probably specific points of this fort, right? So like you can put some kind of like information next to their I don't know, tunnel, next to their something else, right? So you don't need to kind of like some sort of like a super duper advanced digital equipment for this, but yes, next time we definitely need her to come in. Yes, sorry.
Well, you were summarizing. Is there more you'd like to say?
Yes.
Something you and I are kind of cutting at each other. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay, and then what I was trying to say. Okay, and then the last thing what I was thinking about is like, okay, so if we're going to renew the plan, so previously at DLNR, so they did some sort of like public content or something like, I don't know how you call it, or like who proposed it? No, it was not a design even. It was like just kind of like a conceptual plan. So I'm just wondering, like, should we kind of like initiate some sort of content? Alex? Yeah, can you hear me? Yes. Sorry, Viber is very bad. Skype much better. I'm sorry. Next time only Skype. So I just try to kind of like put together some sort of like any kind of help that I can think of.
The Russian storyline needs to be updated.
Definitely, 100%.
So if you can concentrate on that, because that's not something we can do.
No, it's obvious.
And we can concentrate on figuring out the other perspectives, you know, the local perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can bring it together and see how they all fit together. Because we need it for the website, we need it for figuring out what the interpretation is going to be, you know, what devices we might use.
Well, this is their, I would say this is like an answer with the three sources. We have already 2 books published in Russian. We have third source is Alexander. He's going to rehash everything again and just dig it again. So pretty much, because I spoke to the Polonsky, Patricia Polonsky from the UH, and there she showed me this previous publication of their professor of Russian.
Richard Pierce, right? That one.
No, it was Russian.
Bolkhovedinov.
Muhamedinov's book. Yeah.
Bolkhovedinov.
Bolkhovedinov.
Oh, yeah, Nikolai Bolkhovedinov. Yeah.
Yes. So she showed me this, and then like Alex brought the second book. So and then like Alex right now is going back again to the archives to dig it again, so for all these materials about this fort. So far, yes, we forced to finish this. We have to kind of like come up with the whole story. That even we had a discussion with the Alex. Maybe there is some sort of potential for kind of like any kind of like a scenario for the movie or for a cartoon or something, just to kind of like to do this, because we have a lot of material, but we need to kind of like make a line, right?
Well, actually, Dmitry Simagin, he wrote a book about the whole story of Russian period in Hawaii, and we have it on Russian. It's pretty interesting story, and it's like a fiction, but it's a historical based story, and probably we can try to translate it. It's good written, and let's think about it.
Yep.
And that's always the challenge